Are the San Francisco 49ers on the verge of making even more roster moves and signings? Because San Francisco today worked out a quarterback and even more wide receivers. Also, there was that report that we talked about a little bit earlier today about the Niners being interested in the John Metchie trade, but the Philadelphia Eagles beat them out. We're going to take a look at other wide receiver targets for San Francisco because they missed out on Metchie. I do want to begin here, though. As I sit here on this Monday, August 18th, regular season opener on the road for the Niners against the Seattle Seahawks, going to be here before we know it, and I cannot wait for the regular season to get underway. If you're with me and you're pumped up for week one, I want you to show me by hitting that thumbs up icon and liking the video right now. So developing news for the Niners here. Are the Niners on the verge of signing a quarterback and potentially another wide receiver? This roster has been so fluid all throughout training camp and in the preseason because San Francisco has been a very injured team. And with all of the Niners' injuries, the Niners have staged workouts with a bunch of players all throughout camp, all throughout the preseason. And when that has happened for this particular ball club, it has often led to player signings. And here on this show, I always want to be ahead of the news. And oftentimes, we are. So these are the players who the Niners worked out today on this Monday, August 18th. Quarterback Nate Sudfeld, wide receiver Jalen Guyton, wide receiver Colton Dowell, and wide receiver J.J. Jones. What's interesting here is that the Niners worked out Nate Sudfeld. He was with San Francisco in 2021. Then he was with this team in the preseason in 2022. But guess why he did not make the Niners roster? Because of the emergence of quarterback Brock Purdy, who went into camp, performed very well, balled out in the preseason, and made the initial 53-man roster as Mr. Irrelevant and beat out Nate Sudfeld. Sudfeld, a 2016 sixth-round pick out of Indiana. He was with the Philadelphia Eagles after he was with Washington from 2017 through 2020, with the Niners in 2021. Because Trey Lance got hurt, he then got elevated to the active roster that year, and then he spent 2 years with the Detroit Lions after he was let go by San Francisco 2022, 2023 in the Motor City. Has pretty good size at 6'6", 230. Doesn't really have that strong of an arm, but Kyle Shanahan did like him. That's why he brought him in back in 2021. And this Niners quarterback position is in a spot where we know Brock Purdy is QB1, franchise quarterback, making $55 million per year on that new contract extension, 7th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. His roster spot is safe. And then Mac Jones, otherwise known as McCorkle, that is his middle name, he's going to be QB2. I know he threw the pick in the first preseason game. That wasn't his fault. That was on the rookie wide receiver, Jordan Watkins. He threw the pick in the second game. That was on him because Jeremy Chin faked him out, or Mac Jones just never saw him. Chin dropped back in zone coverage. Mac Jones telegraphed that throw, and he threw it right to him. Outside of those picks, though, Mac has played pretty good ball. He's known where to go with the rock. He's been fast as far as his reads, his timing, and his anticipation. He's been able to layer footballs in there to that second and third level, and you have to feel confident about where Mac Jones is as the backup, and he's so much better than the likes of Joshua Dobbs and Brandon Allen, who were the backups for this team last year. Then you have Carter Bradley as QB3. He was awful against the Broncos in the preseason opener, to the point where that game became dreadful to watch. Couldn't put any touch on the ball. He was telegraphing throws. DBs were able to read his eyes. Should have had multiple turnovers in that game, and he couldn't throw with any touch. I mean, he reared back, and he threw 100-mile-per-hour fastballs when sometimes you got to put some touch behind the ball. But to his credit, after he was so bad against Denver, I thought he actually made huge improvements in that second preseason game. He started that game off like 8 of 9, finished 8 of 13, 96 yards, a rating of 84.1. That was second behind Brock Purdy, who was hovering around 100, and he gave the Niners a chance to win that football game. But was it enough to save his job? Or are the Niners bringing in Nate Sudfeld because They don't have confidence in Bradley in being their QB3, and they'd rather have Nate Sudfeld, a veteran who's been with a few teams, who's gotten some decent run, and has gotten some snaps throughout his career. They want him to be the third stringer. Let's continue to monitor that situation for San Francisco. As for the wideouts here, Guyton, Dowell, Jones. Dowell and Jones really haven't done much in their respective NFL careers. Guyton has, though, and he could be a wide receiver who the Niners bring in as a training camp preseason body because they're banged up at that position. He's 6'1", 212, 28 years old. He went to Allen High School where he played with Kyler Murray. He began his college career at Notre Dame, and then his last 2 years he played for North Texas, the same school that Jeff Wilson played at. They actually overlapped at North Texas. Guyton was not drafted. UDFA in 2019. He was originally signed by the Dallas Cowboys. Then he spent a decent chunk with the Los Angeles Chargers, 2019 through 2023. Then was with the Raiders practice squad last year. And Guyton actually put up some decent numbers for an undrafted free agent. In 2020, 511 receiving yards with 3 touchdowns. And then in 2021, he had 448 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. 28 grabs in 2020, 31 grabs in 2021. So as compared to the other wideouts who he worked out alongside, Guyton, I think, would be the much better option just because of the experience factor alone and what he's done in his NFL career. This is why you subscribe to the show, ladies and gentlemen, because when there's Niners news, I always talk about it here on the show, and I'm always here for the faithful. So go on down and hit that subscribe button right now. More to get to on the other side. We're going to take a look at some trade candidates at the wide receiver position for San Francisco, but I want to give a shout out to our friends at Prize Picks. Thank you so much to Prize Picks for making today's 49ers Report possible. We're so jacked up to have them back as a sponsor here at Chat Sports for the 2025 football season. And speaking of the football season, preseason football is underway. College football is almost here, so don't miss any of the action this season on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code CLNS. That's our exclusive code. And get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. It's the #1 fantasy sports app. Win big up to 2,000 times your money. And Prize Picks is available in 45 states, including the great state of California for the faithful and the Niner gang. Our lineup that we want to tell you about, we always know ball here at Chat Sports, and Prize Picks makes it so easy. We got some Monday Night Football tonight between Washington and Cincinnati. So let's roll with Sam Hartman, more than 85.5 passing yards. Taj Brooks, more than 31.5 rushing yards. What I love about Prize Picks, they always give you specials. For instance, Avery Johnson, Kansas State quarterback, going up against Brock Purdy's Iowa State Cyclones, more than a half passing yard. Say whatever you want about your quarterback evaluations for Avery Johnson. He's throwing for more than a half yard. So play $5, get $50 instantly, win up to 2,000 times your money. It's real money sports action made easy. Pick more, pick less, pick Prize Picks. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. All right, we move forward on today's show on this beautiful Monday. So glad that all of you are hanging out here with me on the program. According to a report over the weekend, the 49ers looked into trading for wide receiver John Metchie, a 2022 second-round pick by the Houston Texans, but they were unable to land him because they were beat out by the Philadelphia Eagles, who offered Houston a better deal. But this shows that the 49ers are clearly interested in adding a wide receiver to their team. They have elected to not sign veterans, but they're clearly interested in adding, by way of a trade, a wide receiver. And the Niners situation at wide receiver has been very fluid all throughout training camp and in the preseason. Ricky Pearsall, he's been balling, and we saw that in that preseason game against the Raiders. That 1-2 punch between Purdy and Pearsall, it's been humming. That translated to game action. Great to see. But Jawan Jennings out with the calf. Brandon Ayuk out with that ACL, MCL that he suffered last year. Demarcus Robinson could be suspended a few games to start the year because of that DUI penalty. And Jordan Watkins was having a great training camp in preseason, but has a high ankle sprain. He's out for a little while. And so these 5 players could become viable trade targets for San Francisco. Jahan Dotson, Adam Thielen, Curtis Samuel, Romeo Doubs, and Terry McLaurin. Let's talk about all of these players individually here. First, with Jahan Dotson. With the reigning Super Bowl champions, they have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. That is their 1-2 punch and a great wide receiver duo for Philadelphia. With them trading for John Metchie and Jahan Dotson going into a contract year as a former first-round pick, does that signal with Darius Cooper, Anaya Smith, Johnny Wilson having good training camps that they are going to trade away Jahan Dotson or he's available on the trade block? That is a possibility for Philadelphia, and because of that, Dotson could become available. A team like the Carolina Panthers, Adam Thielen last year for Bryce Young was a really good player, and the year before that with Carolina, he also had really good production. But there are a couple of young wide receivers rising up and playing well for Carolina. So too is Bryce Young. You have Ted McMillan, who they took in the first round, Xavier Legette, who they drafted out of South Carolina 2 years ago. You also have other players on that team who are very interesting, like a Hunter Renfrow, who is challenging to make the team. Coker having a really good preseason in training camp. So that could make Adam Thielen a little bit expendable. Curtis Samuel is a player who on Washington was really good. Then he goes to Buffalo, and I think that he's a viable wideout at the NFL level. But like Carolina, there are other players who are kind of taking advantage of their opportunities with the Bills, which could make Samuel expendable, and he's been banged up from time to time. The Green Bay Packers have cooled over time on Romeo Doubs, and they're pretty stacked at the wide receiver spot. They also drafted Matthew Golden out of Texas, who they really, really like. They drafted Savion Williams, who's kind of a Deebo Samuel, Cordero Patterson type of Swiss Army knife player. And so that could make Romeo Doubs available. Romeo Doubs on this team, I think, would fit in very, very nicely. The blockbuster trade target would be Terry McLaurin. Wants a new deal, hasn't gotten that deal from Washington. They did activate him over the weekend, which signals that he is getting closer to at least starting to practice and join his teammates. But these are all wide receivers at different levels, right? Different ages, different levels of production. McLaurin, obviously, the best, the most accomplished, 5 straight years of over 1,000 yards. I would be surprised by this, but you have to include him in that mix because there are a lot of overlappings between the Niners and Washington. So I leave you with this. Do you think the Niners need to trade for a wide receiver? Type trade or pass. Join the conversation. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll be back in the studio tomorrow talking all things Niners.